Hello, everyone. This is Melissa, your host for the day. Today, in this session, we're going to talk about how to effectively use a syllabus. And we'll talk about what that means. And just like SpongeBob here, we will be diving in and looking at what all we need to know about this syllabus situation. So, without further ado, let's get started. First off, what is a syllabus? That's a great question. Let me answer that for you. A syllabus is your guide to a course. It's what will be expected of you. Generally, it includes course policies, rules and regulations, required texts like your textbooks, and a schedule of assignments. So this will give you due dates, when you need to do things for class, etc. Some best ways to use that syllabus include all of the following. So, finding your professor's contact info, finding what textbooks you need, figuring out what the rules and policies are for your class because they change per class and per professor. Finding your course schedule, finding important due dates, finding a grading scale, and weighted assignments, which I'll explain what all this means as we go. And rubrics for grading. Sometimes those can change, so I'll explain what that means too. Finding your professor's contact info. So, usually at the very top of your syllabus that you'll get from your class is your instructor's contact info. You'll see that right here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. It's at the top if not. You'll want to keep this contact info in a place where you can actually use it when you need it, such as your internet went out so you can't access an assignment and you need to call or email your professor to let them know it might be a little late. Can you get an extension? Things like that. If you have questions, professors are usually more than willing to meet with your students to help them out, especially if you're proactive and reach out kind of earlier than the assignments actually do. It's good to have phone number, email, whatever you need. Their office hours when you might be able to just drop in if it's an in-person kind of meeting. Um, yeah, all of this is super important. Make sure you keep it in a place that you'll actually use it. Maybe that means you'll add your contact info to your phone so you don't lose, if you know yourself and you know you might lose a piece of paper. Or keep that piece of paper tucked away somewhere. There's usually a PDF version of the syllabus on CCD Connect too if you lose it, so you should always be able to have some sort of access to the syllabus. Finding required text. Here's Kid President, he's got a bunch of books. Hopefully that's not you because books can be expensive. um, so in your syllabus, it will have a header that says required text, and it'll say sometimes even where it's available, like at the bookstore. I suggest waiting until your actual first class meeting to buy the books. Sometimes professors will change what they're requiring. Sometimes they'll decide not to use the book and they'll let you know for sure by class time. So if you wait, usually it's in your best interest. And if you have a required textbook that says it's available at the bookstore, sometimes you can get these used or you can rent them and it's a cheaper option. You could also try and use the internet and find different versions of them, just depending on what your professor requires will be kind of what you need more. Finding course rules and or policies. So your syllabus will have various rules and policies that you have to follow for your class. And these will change per class. So you have to kind of keep up with what your professor wants for every single class that you're enrolled in. In this specific syllabus, it says the course has 4 important rules. So then we go through and read them. The first big rule is showing up. And it explains that every student has 1 free unexcused absence. The second one, at the bottom, it says an unexcused absence will cost you 5% in your final class grade, which is a whole bunch. So you want to make sure you're following the rules, paying attention to what your professor wants and needs from you. So for this class, showing up is super important, making sure that you're actually going to class whether it's virtually hopping on the computer, your professor is taking attendance there too, or going to class in person. These are the rest of those rules and procedures for class. You'll find in many of these, they'll have attendance policies. These are super important for in-person, high flex, or sync classes. If your professor is taking attendance, you definitely want to be there because your grade can start to drop. Like in this class, more than 3 unexcused absences may result in a failing grade for the class. So if you miss class 3 times and you don't tell your professor why and that there wasn't an excuse for missing it, you would be failing the class, regardless of how well you were doing before. So definitely pay attention to that. Do the work. Obviously, every class you want to be completing your work. That's how you have good grades and keep a high GPA, so you want to do that. In this class, they want you to participate actively, and it gives you different recommendations for how to do that, like turning off your cell phone, showing respect, and trying to share your opinions within the class, and being honest, which we all hopefully will strive to do that in our classes. Yeah. Finding your course schedule. This can change. In any syllabus, there's always a little addendum that says anything in this is subject to change, which basically means the professor can change their mind. They can change due dates if your class is falling behind the pace that they thought they were going to follow. This is an example of the course schedule. See, it says subject to change. So week 1, saying September 27th, you would get the syllabus, you read chapter 1, and take a self-assessment. By the time you got to September 9th or 29th, you should be doing chapter 2, personal responsibility, and a quiz, but maybe your professor wants to change it. They could do that. Usually they'll give the class a heads up if something is changing. So it's just something to be aware of and to keep track of. It also usually includes some due dates that you're going to need to know. So in week 2, October 6th, due in class is your calendar and some homework that you'd been assigned. So make sure you're paying attention to when things are due. So this one says due in class, which means by October 6th, when it's class time, you have to have actually submitted it. Some professors do due dates as in it's due this day after class. Sometimes it's before class, and this one is due in class. So just make sure you're reading, and if you have questions, your professor will always be happy to answer those, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Finding important due dates. So we talked about that. This is still the class schedule, so it's kind of the same thing. But it tells you when different things are due. Sometimes it will have important dates also of like this one, November 24th, is scheduled for no class. So you want to make sure you're keeping track of when you actually need to go to class and when you don't. This could be especially important for high flex classes where sometimes you're in class in person and sometimes you're in class online. So just making sure that you're keeping up with your emails, with your syllabus, and seeing what's going on with your class so that you're prepared. Mark up that syllabus. So, with your syllabus, usually if it's an in-person class, your professor will give you a printed off version of the syllabus. Or if you're online and you have access to printing, you can print off your syllabus and use that to kind of mark off what you've done. So when I was in college, I would highlight important dates. I put those in my calendar so I would remember, oh, I have a test coming up, or oh, I have a paper due next week. You can also mark off things as you go. So that could be crossing out different things that you've done for the class. It could be writing in your grade next to things. Really using your syllabus to keep track of everything in one spot for your class is really, really useful. If you are taking an online class and you don't have access to printing, you can go to your CCD Connect and find the syllabus. Once you open it up, you can click Control P and save it as a PDF. It'll look like it's trying to print it, but you'll just change the drop down menu to save as PDF. And then you can save it right to your computer. Once you have it on your computer, You can use Adobe Acrobat or certain browsers, like I know Microsoft Edge and sometimes Google Chrome are pretty good about being able to edit PDFs so that you'd be able to keep track of what's happening in your class, mark things off, and use it to your advantage, basically, to do the best that you can in your class. And I do recommend using a planner or your phone calendar. Sometimes it's setting alarms on your phone, whatever helps to keep up with due dates and making sure that you're getting your assignments done when they're supposed to be done. That's going to ensure the best possible success in your classes, making sure that you're on top of all of your assignments when you need to be studying, when you have a test coming up, things like that. Finding the grading and weighted scale. So, not all grades are created equal, which means you will have different assignments that are worth different amounts of points. To the right is an example of grading and course assignments. So you'll see in this example, your calendar, it would only be worth 15 points. So yes, it's important that you do the calendar, but it's maybe not as important to spend all of your time on it because it's not worth as many points as, say, class participation, which is worth 150 points. So making sure that you're showing up and participating is really important. Same with your library research paper. It's worth 100 points, where your career assignment number 1 is only worth 30 points. So it's important to do all of your assignments, yes. It's important to try and do your best on all of your assignments, yes. Should you prioritize by how much it's worth? Sometimes, yes, you absolutely should do that because you want to make sure you're getting as many points as you can so that your grade is higher. Yeah, so don't spend all of your time on small assignments. And look at the grading scale too. Sometimes this changes per professor and per class. So in this scale, if you wanted an A, you would have to get at least a 93. Remember, for CCD classes, you need at least a C for it to count towards your degree. Otherwise, you're going to have to retake it. So even if you get a D, you're not failing, but it doesn't actually count towards your degree. So you always want to get at least a C or higher. Finding grading rubrics or instructions. Assignments and gradings. Yeah, this is usually included in every syllabus, and it'll tell you what the points are and kind of gives you a breakdown of what that means. So this one is class participation and attendance, and it explains what's expected of you when you're in class, that you come prepared, that you engage in discussion, which means that you're actually like talking, you're raising your hand, you're trying to be engaged and listening to others, and not like playing on your phone in the middle of a lecture, that sort of thing. Here's another example, that calendar thing that we talked about. It would be due October 6th. And it kind of breaks down what these 15 points come from and what's expected of you to be able to get to 15 points. And here's an owl that's really excited because it thought that it got a bad grade on a test, but it didn't. Always exciting. Here is a rubric. Sometimes this is how it'll be formatted in a syllabus. So it kind of outlines what's expected. So out of content, you could get 6 points if you answer all the questions thoroughly. You would get 4 points if you're missing something from the 6-point category. Like, student could have put more effort into it. Maybe that means you had lots of typos, or maybe that means it wasn't exactly what they had explained that you needed for the actual content. And you would get 2 points if you didn't complete all the questions, but you did at least like try to do something. So sometimes it's worth it too if you somehow accidentally forgot that your journal was coming up and you need to do it last minute. This will show you that at least trying to do something will give you some points, and some points are better than no points. So keep that in mind Try your best, obviously, to get things done ahead of time, but life happens. And usually, if you talk to your professors, they'll be pretty understanding. Um, but just try your best to not need to do that. And then you'll get the best grades possible. All right, now it's time to practice with an activity. I'm going to turn it over to your real life host, Melissa. It's been a great session. Thanks for listening to me. Okay.